Hello again everybody and welcome back to Down to Earth with Jim. I'm in the polytunnel today doing some jobs as it is really wet outside. It's a horrible, miserable day. It's quite mild though, so it's not too bad. But I'm going to be overwintering these pepper plants. So we've only just stopped picking these. They've been quite slow to get going this year. Now because we live in a cold climate in the UK, we have to give these as long as possible to grow. Last year we got them in August, but we've only just really picked some and they were green as well. So what I'm going to be doing, I'm going to be overwintering these so that we can hopefully get some peppers early next year. Now, not a lot of people know that you can actually get away with growing the same pepper plant year after year because they are perennial plants. Now, we usually treat them as annuals and we start them off early in the season around January, February time because they do take quite a long time to get going actually. Pepper plants can take up to 4 weeks to germinate, and some certain varieties of chili can take even longer than that. So this is a really good way to skip all that and get our plants off to a really quick start in the spring. So we don't have to wait for seeds to germinate. We don't have to wait for our plants to start growing, because pepper plants, as soon as they're sprouted and they get going, it takes quite a long time for them to get to a decent size before they're transplanted out. First thing you want to do when you're saving your pepper plants for overwintering is you want to make sure that the plant that you're choosing has been quite productive that year. You want to choose one that has done well, because then this plant will also do well next year. And you also want to make sure that the variety you are choosing is a variety that you like, obviously. So when pepper plants are exposed to temperatures consistently below 15 degrees Celsius or around 60 degrees Fahrenheit, they go into a dormant state, and also they'll do this when light is reduced as well. Okay, so the things you're going to need to do this are obviously some good gardening gloves. You should always wear gloves when you're handling soil and things like that. You're going to need some secateurs, some good sharp gardening scissors, a hand trowel or a shovel, and you're also going to need, although it's optional, you don't have to, a bucket of water so you can rinse off the roots, and a container to put your overwintering pepper plant in. I've got a container here that's 10 litres in size. That should be fine. You shouldn't need anything any bigger than that, just as long as the roots can comfortably sit inside the pot and they're not all crammed in there. And you're also going to need some good quality fresh compost as well. It has to be fresh. It's really important, because if it's not, then you're going to get all sorts of nasty pathogens and rotting and all sorts going on if it's not fresh. So it's really important that it is fresh. And then you're also going to need, although this is optional actually, you don't really need this, is some fertilizer or grow more, just to give the plants a little bit of a head start in the spring when they do sprout back. So the variety of pepper I've chosen to overwinter is just a sweet bell pepper called Beauty Bell. Now, we don't really grow mini chilies. You can obviously do this with every pepper, but I found whenever we're growing chilies, we just waste most of them, because we don't stick chilies in all that much really. But the first step to doing this is you're going to gently put your trowel into the soil around the plant, not too close to the stem, because you don't want to damage the main root. You're just going to gently tease. Okay, now some of the roots are probably going to snap, but that's fine. But we've got a good root ball there. Now you can either shake off the excess soil, or you can rinse them off in this bucket of water here to get off the excess soil off. Let's see, it's nice and clean. Okay, so we have a relatively clean root ball there. Okay, so we've got our clean roots now, we've rinsed them off. Now we're just going to trim them down a little bit Now these aren't really too bad, but if your root ball is a bit bigger, it's going to need trimming more. In that case, you're going to need to trim them down by about a third, not too much. But I'm just going to trim all the larger bits off. It's nice and neat, not too bad. So I only have to trim this a little bit. So we've got a nice, neat little trimmed root ball there. And then what we're going to do next is we're going to remove all this foliage on here. There are a few little fruits on here and a few little flowers. We don't want any leaves or anything on this plant during the winter because the leaves will rot away and it'll encourage pests and diseases and stuff like that. And we don't want that. Plus, the plant's not going to need its leaves anyway because it's going to be stored in a dark place. So I'm going to start removing all of the stem and the foliage now using my secateurs. Now I'm going to start off by taking off these big branches here. Taking all the big branches off. It's quite a big plant, this. It might look dramatic, but trust me, these plants will bounce back very strongly next year. So all the leaves need to come off. Okay, it's a little bit of a funny shaped pepper plant, this one, to be honest, but you should be left with obviously your main stem here, and then you want to leave around about 2 or 3 offshoots stem, like a Y shape. Now this is more of a different shape than that, but I'm going to so after you've cut all the foliage and all the stems off, you should be left with 2 or 3 stalks. Could be a Y shape or just the shape of a fork, depending on how many you decide to go with. They should be around about 6 inches long, and it may look dramatic, but trust me, these will grow back strongly next year, so don't worry. So this is what to do if you're growing your peppers in something such as a raised bed or open ground like I am. But if you're growing your peppers in containers, the chances are that the whole root system is going to be really root bound and compact, and when you pull the plant out you're going to end up with a massive great big root ball. If that's the case, then just gently break up the root ball until you're left with just your main roots like this, really. So that's what to do, and then just trim them if they need to down to an acceptable size like that. Okay, so now we're going to pot up our little pepper plant specimen ready to be overwintered. Now, these roots are very easily going to fit in this pot. This pot is more than big enough for this. But depending on how big your pepper plant got, your root ball is probably going to be much bigger, or it could be much smaller like mine. Mine's quite small. But what we're going to do is we're going to fill up this pot now with this just general multi-purpose compost, nothing exciting or expensive or anything like that. But the most important thing, like I said, is that this compost is fresh and it's not old used compost. Now we're going to mix in, this is optional, you don't have to do this. You're going to mix in a good handful or a small handful of grow more or just general purpose fertilizer, really. And what this is going to do is it's going to give the pepper plant a little bit of a boost when it does sprout back in the spring. So we're just doing the work now rather than next spring, really, just leaving it in here, because this pepper plant's going to require quite a lot of nutrients and energy to get going again. So we're just going to sit our root ball in the middle like that. Got a bit more soil in there actually. It's quite small. We're just going to sit it like that, and then we're just going to simply add the compost around the root ball like that. I'm not going to fill it up too high. I want to have the soil level exactly where it was when it was in the ground as well, because if I start mounding the soil up around the stem, then that could cause problems with rotting. So I'm just going to have it at the line of where it was before when it was in the ground, like that. And that there is our potted pepper plant. So we've got our pepper plant potted up now, and we're just going to give it a little bit of water, just to water it in a little bit so the soil's moist, just like that. And we're going to leave that then. And then over the winter months, we shouldn't really have to give this plant much water because it's not going to be growing. We're just going to be giving it enough water every 3 or 4 weeks, just to make sure that the soil is moist and the roots don't dry out. So we're going to be storing this pepper plant in a frost-free, dark but cool place over the winter, somewhere that's going to be consistently below 15 degrees Celsius and dark so that it's dormant over the winter and doesn't grow. We're also going to store this in our shed. You can store it in a garage or a spare room or a utility room, anywhere really, as long as it's frost-free, cool and dark. Now the thing with storing it in a shed like I am, it's probably going to be a good idea to have something on hand like this frost protection fleece, just in case you do need to wrap your pepper plant in this, in case there is the threat of a hard frost, because your pepper plant's not going to, even though it's dormant and it's not growing, it's not going to tolerate a hard frost. And somewhere like a shed, it's a good chance that it could still be penetrated by hard frost. So it's a good idea to just keep an eye on the weather forecasts, and if there is a hard frost expected, it's probably a good idea to wrap some fleece around just like this. Nothing extraordinary or complicated here, just like that. You can wrap string around if you want, or tape or something like that, but that should be alright, just like that, covered in the fleece. Okay, so I've done 4 of these pepper plants to overwinter, and I've now put them in the shed. There is a little bit of light coming through the window, but it's relatively low and it's going to be cool in here. It will stay below 15 degrees Celsius or 6 degrees Fahrenheit over the winter. So these peppers should stay dormant over the winter. I'm going to come in here every 3 or 4 weeks just to check that the soil is still moist, not wet. Definitely not wet because it will rot. I'll just check that it's still moist so that the roots aren't drying out. They're not going to use much. They are not going to use much moisture because they're dormant and they're not growing. So it's literally just a case of keeping them roots moist and stopping them from drying out. So it's important that you use fertile, clean soil whenever you're doing this. If you need to trim the roots, trim them down a little bit. If they're small enough, then they're fine. But if they're nice, if they're long and they're straggly, then trim them down by about 1/3 so they can fit in these little pots comfortably. And also, it's a good idea to apply a little bit of fertilizer or even some bloodfish and bones, so that when spring does come around and they do start growing again, they're going to have a little bit of a head start and it will give them a little bit of a boost. So overwinter these in the shed or anywhere that's cool, frost-free and dark, and just bring them out again when temperatures start to rise again around about April time. Stick them in your greenhouse, let them regrow, and when they start getting to a decent size, just pop them on into something bigger again. So this is a really good idea to do, because starting peppers off from seed takes a long time, and this way you've already got a mature plant that's ready to go, and it'll grow much quicker, and you'll have peppers probably a good 2 months earlier than what you otherwise would have done. Like we get peppers August, September, October. In fact, we've only just finished picking. We've only just picked our peppers now, and they were only green. They weren't even ripe. So doing this is it's gonna give you peppers much earlier. So I hope you enjoyed my video, and I hope you managed to gain something from it. If you liked it, then hit that like button so YouTube can suggest this video to other like-minded users. And remember to hit that subscribe button so you can see whenever I upload new content just like this. Thank you for watching, and remember, no matter what the weather, enjoy gardening. See you in the next video.